And I'm back again. Daniel Zoliro here, and we are now on part 2 of my Pixinsight workflow tutorial of the Sombrero Galaxy. If you missed the first part of this tutorial, you'll want to watch that first by clicking this card, and I'll also leave a link for you in the description. So I have to apologize, I was hoping to get this video out a few days ago, but you might be able to hear that my voice is a bit hoarse. It's better today, so I decided I was going to try to finish this up, but I apologize for not getting the video out sooner. So without further ado, let's get going on this tutorial. If you remember from the last video, we've finished up by doing the background neutralization and the color calibration on the RGB image of the Sombrero Galaxy. The next step in this process is to stretch our image. Everything that we've done so far on both the RGB and the LUM image has been done on fully linear images. We haven't done any permanent stretching. That's one of the things that makes Pixinsight really unique compared to other types of processing, is that we get to do a bunch of stuff on linear data before we even begin stretching it. So let me go ahead, minimize this, and let's get out the process for ArcsinhStretch. We're also going to be using the Histogram Transformation, so make sure that we've got that there. Now the first thing we need to do is let's reset the screen transfer function, so we're looking at this image right here. Then we're going to get out the histogram transformation. I'm going to reset this and click tracking on. We're going to apply just a little bit of a stretch by taking the midpoint here and pulling it down. Now let's get on preview so we can actually see what we're doing. We're going to pull it down just a little bit until we just begin to see some of the galaxy there. I'd say about right there looks pretty good. You can see just a little bit of it. Let's go ahead and close the preview and apply that. Now we get the ArcsinhStretch out. Now the way that we're processing this particular picture, because we're using an RGB frame and we're also going to combine it with a Luminance frame, this is called LRGB combination. Because we're doing it that way, we're going to stretch the RGB image and stretch the LUM image quite a bit differently from each other. And honestly, especially with this RGB image, it's not going to look very good, and that's okay. We're not trying to get detail in this photo. What we really want to get is color. So we want to select Protect Highlights and use RGB Working Space. Most of the time I do the Protect Highlights. There are some images I find that leaving that unchecked works okay, but most of the time you'll want both of those selected. Let's turn on our preview here, and all we're going to do is just pull this up slightly. You don't want to overkill it by pulling it all the way over. What I like to do is incremental stretches. Let's start around 5 and apply that to the image. Let me pull this over here. Okay, drag that onto the image. Make sure you drag it onto your image and not onto the preview. It's not going to do anything if you drag it on the preview. So you can see we've got this is basically the way the preview works, is we're actually previewing what it will look like if we do it again. So if I pull this over, it doesn't look the same. You can actually, with the preview, turn the preview on and off. That's what it actually looks like. There's with the preview on if we were to drag it over and drop it again. Another thing with the preview that you can do is you can actually make previews within a preview. Inception maybe? Inception maybe. All right. So you can drag and click that little box there, drag on, and get a closer look and back out just like that. Okay. Let's do this again. Drag and drop onto the image. We'll do this a few times. We want to take care to monitor how much our luminance, how much brightness we have. So you can mouse over the bright spots like the stars. We don't want to oversaturate and blow out the highlights of the photo. So right now I can see if I'm in the center of the galaxy, right here, looking at the bottom of the screen, I'm seeing 0.63, 0.62 on average. Ideally, for both the luminance and the RGB data, we want to get the images stretched to a max of around 0.7 or 0.8. So I think we can definitely do that again. All right, let's just do one more. Now let's close out our preview and take a look at this and see how everything's looking. I'm going to turn these previews off. Delete them. Let's check our values. We're at about 0.5. We want to get to around 0.7 or 0.8. That's the most that we want to stretch the highlights of the RGB and the LUM data is to around 0.7 or 0.8. That way, when we do the LRGB combination, they will blend well with one another. I think maybe we could do one more. Let's just drag that on there and see. I think that's overkill. Undo. All right. Now, I want to show you something too. My Hyperstar rig that I use to image this, image the RGB data, doesn't always give the best looking stars. I've tried to find a solution for this, but a lot of the stars end up looking half blue, half orange, half pink. It's kind of basically the stars aren't completely lining up. I don't want to get too much into this, but sometimes, even before I start working on the RGB image, if it's a one-shot color camera, I'll actually separate the channels by clicking that button like this, and then you can go to process and do star alignment and actually star align two of these, like the green and the blue, to the red channel, and sometimes it'll make these stars a little bit more clear or lined up. At least the color channels will be lined up just a little bit better. I tried it on this one on my first round and it didn't really do anything. And the repaired HSV separation script worked a little bit, but it didn't fix everything. So maybe I need to use a lower gain on my RGB camera to fix some of the star saturation problems. Anyway, so back to this. If you'll notice, I do not mess with the black point. I like to, even sometimes if I stretch it beyond where the background is too bright, I like to adjust everything with histogram transformation. So that's what we're going to do. We really need to brighten up the core a little bit to around 0.7. Let's see, put tracking on, put this on. Let's bring this down. Okay, there's about 0.7. I'm liking that. Maybe just a bit more. Let's see. Yep, that looks good. Now our background's too bright, so let's drag this down. We want to be careful when looking at the shadows that we don't clip too many shadows. Generally, I don't like to go, if I can help it, go over 0.05% on that. So I'll show you what it looks like when you start clipping too much. See, we're at 5% clipping now, and that looks terrible. Well, let's back up. I'd say that looks good. For galaxies, I like my background to be around 0.1. I'd say that's close enough. Let's close that and apply it. I think that looks fairly decent. Now let's go and apply a little bit of color saturation and bring out some of the colors and stuff. And something else that we can do is actually reduce some of the saturation in the background. That's another thing with RGB cameras, one-shot color cameras, especially with my Hyperstar rig. I get a lot more splotchy looking backgrounds than I do if I were to image with my RGB filters on my mono camera. But we can fix some of that. So now an important thing that we need to do is get rid of some of that green stuff. Images in space are very rarely filled with green coloration. So get out SCNR. You can play with the amount a little bit. A lot of times I find that the amount of 1 works just fine. So let's drag and drop that. There we go. Got rid of some of that green. Okay. Now, we want to try to get rid of some of that splotchiness, so let's go get our two things. We're going to get color saturation process, and we're also going to get, which we already have here, the curves transformation process. The way that we can do this is by using our RGB LUM mask that we used before when we were denoising. Let's see, let's maximize this here. Now we're going to want to make this really contrasty where the background is not protected, but all the bright stuff is protected. So how we do that, get our histogram transformation. I'll show you a couple methods actually. One, we can use histogram transformation. You can just drag these, the mid and the low continually towards each other, and you actually want to clip the background on that. So we want to do some clipping. That's one method right there. The other, and then of course we would apply it. The other method is to use the range selection process. Range selection. Okay, preview. All right, you want to bring your lower limit down so we can change the fuzziness and the smoothness. The smoothness is going to really help even things out a bit. But you'll notice a lot of our, when we do that, a lot of our faint stars are not being protected, so we want to be really careful not to go too far with that. All right, let's see. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Let's stick with the range selection tool. So if we drag and drop, it'll actually create a new window instead of actually affecting our original mask. Let's minimize the mask here. Minimize range selection, and let's apply this mask. See how it looks. One thing too, let me check and see how much noise nope, I don't see any background noise. So when I fully stretch that image with the screen transfer function. So let's go ahead and apply the mask. Okay, we've got our mask on. We do want to invert it though, because right now we're only affecting the bright stuff. We want to affect only the dark background. And let's get the color saturation out. Turn on the preview. Let's zoom in so we can see some of that background stuff. And let's just drag down the slider and see what happens. Okay. So you can see that it definitely lowering some of that fuzzy look to there. Now, you don't want to overdo it. We are affecting some of the stars. If you really dialed in your mask and paid a lot more attention and time to the mask to really protect the stars and only target the background, you can you know, get a much better job of desaturating that background a little bit. Now, we don't want to just completely kill the color, because it looks weird. It looks unnatural. So you want to be careful with your application in desaturating that background. Let's move over here a little bit and apply this and see how it looks. Okay, overall I think that looks pretty good. Okay, minimize that. Oh, by the way, if you hate the stupid moon as much as I do, then hit the like button. Now, let's uninvert the mask. Oops. There we go. Uninvert the mask. That way we can actually apply some saturation to the bright parts of our image. Okay. Go back into color saturation here. Hit the reset. Look at the preview. Let's zoom in on the area closer to the galaxy. And let's pull this up. Okay. Now I would say, in my opinion, that I'm actually resaturating. I'm actually oversaturating some of this because we're seeing some splotchiness there, but I'm going to try to attack that in a different way later on. Let's just take a look. I'm seeing a lot of blue. The blues are getting, I think, a bit overkill. So what we can do with this function here is we want to click this far right one, the linear interpolation. So we don't want any greens, and the blues are overdone. So let's attempt to fix that. Put this here. I'm going to drag this down here. Let's do the greens a little bit lower. And the blues will bring to about here. Leaving our reds and our yellows intact. Okay. Yeah, we're getting a little bit, I think that looks a little bit better. Okay. Let's close this out and apply this here. Another thing that I'm going to do is take a look at curves transformation and see if we can mess around with this. Let's go to the RGBK and let's bring up, whoop, there's something to remember. I still have my mask on. Let's go ahead and remove that mask. There we go. So we can let's bring this up just a tad, making sure that we're not going over 0.7, 0.8. I can go a little bit higher. Looks good. And let's bring this down, put a little bit of an S curve. I think that's too much. Bring this down just a bit. A little bit of an S curve to change the contrast. Definitely think, looking at the background, it looks, if my background on my other one was around 0.1, I want this to also be around 0.1, and overall it's looking a bit higher. So let's bring this down a bit more. That's too much. Still too much. Okay. And let's bring that down a bit because I think that's too much. Okay. Now, here's before and after. So we got a little bit more contrast there. A little bit more saturation. So using both the ArcsinhStretch to stretch our image along with the curves transformation and color saturation tools, you're able to bring out the color, a lot of the color in our image, without oversaturating the luminance areas. It looks good for me for now. Now, I want to remind you, I said this in the last video, I'm going to remind you again, I spend a lot more time on my images than I do for this tutorial. I mean, I'm assuming the first video was 1 hour and 15 minutes. This one will probably be around an hour, hopefully less, I don't know. 2 hours is not how much time I spend on my images. You know, I could spend as much as 4 to 5 hours or even more, depending on the image, to fine-tune everything. So if you are going along with me and you're doing what I'm doing here and your image doesn't look like the original image in my Sombrero Galaxy video, please don't hate on me. I spent a lot of time on that trying to make this look right. So this is just to give you an idea of where to start and what my workflow looks like. All right, that's done for now. Wait, actually, yeah, let's call that good. Let's minimize it and put it up here. Let's get out the loom now and start stretching this. This is where it's fun because this dude has got a lot more detail. It looks a lot nicer. Let's go ahead and delete this preview. Also, we have a mask on there. Let's turn off that mask. Go to screen function, transfer function, reset it. And now let's begin stretching it. Now, you can stretch this in many different ways. I've tried a lot of them. I don't know, it depends on my image. Sometimes I'll just use a screen transfer and histogram transformation and just adjust it. You don't want to go straight up with this and make that permanent because you can tell the background's too bright and there's some since I didn't use flats, you can really see some of that amp glow and some of the dust modes and stuff. But sometimes I do that. And with this particular image, I'm going to try the ArcsinhStretch just like I did with the other. Let's just keep that sitting there. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Go back over to Histogram Transformation, reset it, and let's try to definitely reduce this black point some. Okay. Apply that. Sometimes that's how you can do it. You just kind of go back and forth. Let's try this once more. Back to this. Bring that black point down again. Turn preview on. Getting a bit definitely oversaturated in the star cores here, so let's bring this down. Bring the midpoint all the way up and the black point back out, and see if we can't lower the oversaturated areas in the core. Yeah, that looks good for now. Let's apply this here. Okay, minimize all these things and let's get a closer look at this. Oh yeah. You can see, man, like that. Pull this out. You can really see some of those dust lanes. That's one of the things I like about the ASI183. And of course I have the mono version. You can get the RGB version too. The pixels size on both of them, the mono and the RGB, will be the same pixel size, but they're 0.24 or 2.4 micron size pixels. It just gives a really higher resolution detail. So, all right. Now what I'm going to do is let's bring out some of the contrast in this image. One of the simplest ways to do this is the HDR multiscale transform. This is a simple way to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. If you ever really want to dig really deep into Pixinsight, I highly recommend Adam Block's video tutorials. I've learned a lot of what I know from his tutorials, and he has so many different ways, so many different methods of doing so many different things. And if you're really interested in the why and the how a lot of these functions work, and if you're a super nerd, I mean, he gets into the mathematics of why some of these things and the mathematical functions as to why these processes work the way they do. I understand about 20% of what he says, and then the other 80% goes over my head. And I consider myself to be a pretty technical person, but man, he is way up there. So, anyways, let's get back to this. It starts, number of layers is 6. Let's reset. Yeah, this is the base form, and good place to start. Now, I don't like starting with B3 spleen 5. I usually will try like Gaussian 5 level to start off with. We want to do this with a lightness mask to protect dark background regions. And then another thing I can do is create a preview. This is a common issue that took me a while to figure out if you're new to Pixinsight. You click on your image, you want to draw a preview, but it's grayed out. Why? Well, if you right-click on this, you might have, say, click the option to not show previews. You have to go back on there and hit show previews again in order to re-enable that. All right, let's zoom in here. And let's apply this and see what it looks like. Okay. Yeah, it definitely gives a little bit more definition to it. But let's try one of the others. Just keep trying some of these. I kind of like that one better. I think I like the 7 better than the 5. Another thing we can do is the small scale. I think that makes it a little too dark there. Small scale 6. Don't see much of a difference between that and the 5. Let's go back to Gaussian 5 and let's change the number of layers. Let's go up to 7 and see what happens. Okay, it's interesting. Let's make another preview and we can compare the two. So this is Gaussian 5 with 7 layers. Let's go back to 6 and apply that, and let's compare the two. Yeah, I think I like the 7 layer 5. Pretty good. And then let's compare that with, let's reset this. There's the original undone, and here's that one. Yeah, I really think it brings out some of those details. Now, if you'll notice though, look at what's happening to the stars when I do this. See that? So we want to protect these stars. We don't want to overstretch them. Another thing too is we can actually protect just the very center of this galaxy a little bit. So I'm not gonna worry about the center of the galaxy for now, but I will show you how to protect those stars from being affected. Okay, let's go back to our original image here, and once again a mask, right? So if you don't have this downloaded under utilities and scripts, there's a thing called the game script. It is one of the best ways to make a mask. So let's open that up, and we're just going to click add, put that over the center there, drag and drop, line it up. And I think that looks pretty good. They do have a gradient edge mask and a gradient mask. I'm just gonna, let's see, I like to do let's just leave it on gradient mask there. And I'm gonna apply a little bit of convolution to this. Convolution to soften it. Soften or soften? I think I say soften and my wife gets on to me. Soften, I don't know, who cares? Put it on the preview here. Let's soften this image a bit. Okay. Yeah, I think that looks good. Apply this here. Minimize that. Apply it onto our image. Let's double check and show the mask preview to see how it looks. Okay. Now let's just try it out and see what happens. We can go back to one of our previews. Oh, I liked 7. I need to change that back to 7. I think we need to make that mask a little bigger. No, not bigger. What we need to do is actually, because it doesn't seem to be affecting it as much as it was without the mask. I think our mask is actually too dim, meaning it's too much gray in this area. So we actually just need to brighten it up with Histogram Transformation a little bit. Let's bring our midpoint slider down. Yeah, see, we want to brighten it. Okay, let's do that. Now, anything you do on a mask, if your mask is still applied, it will affect that mask. So I don't actually have to reapply the mask. Yeah, you can see it's a lot brighter. Now, let's try it. There we go. That's what I liked before. Okay, now let's apply it to the whole entire image with our mask in place. And let's have a look. All right, I like it. Our background is still pretty bright. So let's lower that. Take our mask completely off. Histogram Transformation, reset it. Set I like that around 0.1 for galaxy photos. For nebula, that's a whole different ballgame on background levels. Just depends on the nebula and how much of the actual whole frame nebula takes up. Some of the hardest images to do sometimes are like Gamma Cygni nebula that often take up the whole entire frame because it's hard to find a background area in those images. All right. Apply that there. Okay. Minimize. Now, here we go. We've done everything that we need to do for the LUM. Done everything we need to do for this. This looks really, really noisy. And I'm going to try to apply the LRGB combination first and see what happens. We might do a little AC DNR. Sometimes I do it before, like I'll do it just to the RGB image. Sometimes I'll apply it after I've done the combination. Let's just try to do the combination first and see what it looks like. Adam Block said in a recent video that people often want a step-by-step, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then you've got a pretty image. He said it just doesn't work that way because every image is different. Every set of data is different. Every night you image, depending on what settings you use on your camera, depending on you know, so many different factors. There's just not a simple step-by-step deal. You're going to have to take time with every image to learn these processes and learn to fiddle with them a little bit to get things set just right. So, and I can tell just reprocessing this the second time that going a little bit faster and not paying as much attention to some of those details, I don't think it's going to look quite as nice as my original image. Anyways, LRGB combination, turn off RGB. We only want the L. We're going to load up our LUM. Oh, there it is. And I'm going to leave this stuff alone. And let's create a preview of the entire image so we can see how it looks. And let's drag and apply that to the preview. Whew, that's not good. Way not good. I think the problem is the background on our RGB is actually too bright. So let's go back into the histogram transformation and lower that background a smidge more. Being careful not to clip too much. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, going back over to preview again. Let's try to recombine that luminance with RGB. Remember, oh, wow. Now, let's also brighten up the LUM data, because I think it's too dark. Background on the RGB was too bright, and this one is, our bright areas aren't bright enough. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this 2-video workflow tutorial. Was it helpful, too long, too short? Were you offended by my stupid moon comment? Any feedback or suggestions for future videos you can give me are greatly appreciated. Let's try it again. Bring out RGB, LRGB combination, and apply again. Yeah, it's starting to look a little better. Accidentally applied that to the actual image, so I can't blink back and forth. Try that. Let's bring this, if we bring this lightness down slightly, it's gonna make the lightness have a little bit more prominence in the image. Yeah. See that you can adjust that a little bit, but overall I don't like that. I'm gonna take this LUM and brighten it up even more. Unfortunately, I am definitely going to be. I want to avoid some of that background stuff. Oversaturating the core a bit, but it'll be alright for now. Okay, apply that. And hopefully this is it. Hopefully this will do it. Let's see. Definitely looks much brighter, much better. Yeah. Okay. But we've got some terrible background splotchiness and noise. Oops. I've got to actually apply it to the actual image here. All right. Delete my preview. Let's try to attack some of that noise with A DNR. Let's get us a preview going here. We'll get a preview around the bright area, and we'll get a preview around a dark area. Now, I don't think we need a whole lot of lightness noise reduction. It's mostly Chrominance, just from looking at it. So actually, you know what, let's just try taking the lightness off and only applying Chrominance. One of the great things about A DNR is it does have a live preview, so we can actually adjust this stuff as we go. Okay, standard deviation. Bring that up. Now, note that the more you apply some of these things, it's going to reduce, it can hurt the color in your image some. Yeah, see, we're losing a little bit of color in our galaxy right there when we do that. We could apply a mask around the galaxy. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm trying not to make this tutorial too long. We could apply a mask and get it to work like that. Let's just try this and see how it looks. I can put it on the preview and blink back and forth. I think that looks okay. I can tell my voice is starting to get harder to talk here, so okay, now let's close this out, close our previews, and let's do some final adjustments. Now, I want to be perfectly honest with you. I use Pixinsight for 90% of everything that I do, but I still use Photoshop. When I get to this point, I like to use Photoshop to adjust the final color balances and lightness values of my image, and I like to use the camera raw to work on you know, some of the fine details with dehaze and clarity and stuff like that. So let's get out Histogram Transformation and track this. I'm going to zoom in because I want to try to match these background areas a little better. You can tell that the red is higher than the other two. So let's drag our red here and try to bring it down a little bit. Let's apply that and see what happens. Definitely more more balanced. Our background doesn't look as red. Let's go backwards. Yeah, definitely taking a lot of that red out. So let's compare this image that I processed in the tutorial versus the original Sombrero Galaxy image that I did on my own. So here we go. Let's take a look at these two. Here's this one and the original. Yeah, you can definitely tell I put a lot more time and effort into that than this. I will do this though. Let me know in the comments if you want me to actually take this image into Photoshop and do what I normally do in Photoshop for the final processing parts. I will make a video on that and add it to this series as well. I really appreciate you guys checking out my tutorial videos, and I hope that you'll subscribe. I'm doing my best to add new content every week for you.